Hello and welcome to another episode of Nothing But Love. My name is Russ Lewis and I coordinate ACON's aging program, best known as the Love Project or Living Older Visibly and Engaged. The Love Project aims to empower older LGBTQ plus communities, including people living with HIV, to lead healthy, active and more socially connected lives. I'd like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people, who are the traditional owners and custodians and first people of the lands on which we're joining you today. I would like to pay my respects to the elders past and present, and would like to extend my respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who are present with us tonight. If you'd like to put in the chat where you're coming from too, that would be most appreciated. The Love Project marks its 11th anniversary this year. And what better way to celebrate than to chat with fabulous LGBTQ plus heroes, groups, activists, icons, performers, creatives, sports people, authors and businesses who represent our community so well. So without further ado, today we have nothing but love for Kendal Walton, current president of Dykes on Bikes Sydney, Australia's longest running female identified motorcycle club and one of the country's oldest LGBTQI plus community groups. So welcome, Kendal.
Hello, thanks for having me.
You're most welcome. We're having a little bit of a chat. I'm sure some of you might have heard us chatting a little bit before we started, but we've both had a very busy time. And I really appreciate you joining me tonight, Kendal, because I know it's been super crazy busy for you and you've probably still got a lot on your plate before you actually ride down the parade route.
Absolutely.
How you feel? You must be exhausted.
It's
How are
more
you
and more
feeling?
popping up as every moment.
Yeah, have you got a bit of last minute stuff that's coming up?
Yeah, there's definitely. I always sort of now in intense anticipation take a couple of days off before the parade.
Yep, good.
Just from being on the committee for a little while, understanding that things do pop up. But
Yeah.
I think even this year, there's stuff that I wasn't expecting is filling the week already. So
Yeah,
it's
well, look,
busy.
I've had the pleasure of running into you a few times at Fair Day and Inquisition, so it's been really nice
Yes.
to see you out there, and excited to have a bit of a chat before we sort of go into sort of what Dykes on Bikes is about and the parade and your participation there. Could we start with just maybe where you grew up and maybe what comes to mind when you think of sort of your earlier times?
Yeah, absolutely. So I grew up in the beautiful Blue Mountains. It's about 1 hour west of Sydney. I think most of you know where that would be. A lot of people from Sydney say you need a passport to get there, but I'm used to traveling back and forth every day
Yeah.
from when I was living there. It was a really, really beautiful place to grow up in nature, and certainly a marvelous place to learn to ride a motorcycle when I did eventually get my learners. It just, yeah, beautiful big open roads,
Yeah.
and I cannot imagine how daunting it would be to be a learner motorcyclist in Sydney traffic,
Oh,
trying to take those
yeah.
first few steps. So
Who
hats
actually
off to
taught
those
you to
people.
ride?
Pardon?
Who actually taught you to ride?
Um, I didn't. I did the learners course where they sort of take you through the drills, but prior to that, I'd actually never been on a motorcycle. A lot of people I know had sort of been on a dirt bike or something on a property, but I'd never had that experience before. So
Yeah.
it was, part of it just learning to do it yourself as on a motorcycle. You don't get like in a car, you don't have to have someone else with you at the time. You're on
Yeah.
your own a lot.
Yeah.
And then just a couple of good mates that I knew already that rode motorcycles that sort of took me out on a couple of group rides the first time and just got me used to that once I built the confidence myself to start going on highways and things. So
Yeah. Amazing. And
yeah.
when you were growing up, when did you kind of first perhaps realize that you were same-sex attracted and how was the family and yeah, how was that journey for you?
Yeah, my journey with that, in comparison to some other people's, I think I was very lucky. I have accepting, open parents, and I've always known that about both my parents, but I still went through the concerns, and I think I hid it for a little while.
Mm,
It wasn't until my early 20s, so I finished high school, that I sort of fully acknowledged that that was probably something that had been niggling in the back of my mind through high school on and off, but I
mm,
wasn't fully aware of what that meant for me. So
yeah,
it wasn't until it was, I'd sort of met somebody that also was experiencing those same sort of feelings towards me and was open enough to speak about it, that I acknowledged it to myself, and that was that.
mm,
My mum and dad at the time found out separately. I It's always funny to share your coming out stories, or sometimes it's traumatic. Mine is funny. It was I won't go into too much detail, and mum laughs at this because she vaguely recalls asking me, but um, it was more the fact that I was spending a hell of a lot of time with my first girlfriend. We both lived at home in our parents' houses at the time.
yeah,
So the time we spent together, and in the Blue Mountains, there's not a lot of clubs or anything like that. There's not gay bars. So getting to know each other was sort of more like, let's go for long drives in each other's cars and hang out and
yeah.
listen to music and chat. So it got to the point eventually where my mum randomly asked me if why were we out all night, and was I taken up prostitution.
Oh, oh no. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that definitely put me on the spot, and at that moment it was like, what am I going to say to this? And I don't know where she came up with that idea, and we
Yeah,
laugh about it, but it was like, okay, I'll just tell the truth.
yeah.
And she said, I would have loved you either way. That's fine. It doesn't
Oh,
matter. But
wow.
it was,
Yeah,
so we sort of laughed about that, and
yeah.
it
Oh,
is what
that's
it
really
is.
good because, like, as we both know, like the coming out for a lot of us isn't an easy journey, and there's a lot of
No,
kind of heartache and trauma. So it is
yeah,
really lovely when you hear sort of parents are just accepting. Do you have siblings?
yeah. I have a younger brother,
Yeah,
and I think he twigged onto it before I ever said anything.
yeah,
Um, and it just was sort of, it is what it is. So, and he's fine with it, and
yeah.
great loving family. So
And
it's good.
what was the early career for you? What did you sort of leave school to do?
I left school to study photography.
Oh,
So
wow. Okay.
I have a trade certificate in commercial photography, which I sort of dabbled in on and off. But I think the work that the field I was trying to get work in was predominantly, I would need to be based in Sydney to be able to do it.
Yeah,
And, at that time, it wasn't financially viable for me to live in Sydney.
yeah,
So it became a sort of a side hobby career at that point. But,
yeah.
I've got the equipment, I've got the skills to do it. And it's something that's still a passion for me, that I do on and off on the side when I have time, which is not at this point
Yeah, I know.
in my
Look, it's a
life.
lovely
But
skill to have. Like it's a real, like it's a very present skill. You got to be very present to sort of
yeah,
take
yeah.
photos,
So
and I love that.
yeah, I guess it makes me also appreciate when in the position I am, where we are in the media a lot,
Yeah,
understanding the importance of the photographers getting the right shot, and all of that. So I'm always keen to assist to help them set up what they need to get that
yeah.
sort of thing.
And we've
Um,
got some wonderful community photographers, haven't we? Like
yes,
really
yes,
amazing. One of my other guests was Seymour Hardy. I don't know if you had the chance to meet Seymour.
I have. Yes, she's
Yeah,
amazing. So
fantastic. Yeah, she was one of probably the third person I chatted with, and has been a friend for a long time too. But
wonderful.
just to see the depth of work that these photographers do and how they capture our community is really
Yeah.
wonderful.
But other than that, my work has been, it's office work, based
Yep.
work. I think a lot of people forget that I have a full-time job that
Yeah.
is not related to Dykes on bikes or motorcycles or anything like that at all.
Yeah.
But they're thankfully very, very accepting of me as a gay woman, and also of my role, and my commitments around this time. So they almost just preempt that I'm going to be taking annual leave, or that even if I don't, there may be random things that pop up, and
Yep.
leave me to it, and I'll get back to my full time work when I can.
Yeah. Wonderful. And when did you sort of discover Dykes on Bikes? Was it something that was early on, or yeah? How did you sort of get involved initially?
So I think initially it was I mean, I've been to Mardi Gras before I had my motorcycle license, and I think, like many of us, were wowed and in awe of seeing Dykes on bikes ride down the parade route.
Hmm.
You know, that adrenaline rush and the roar of the engines. You
Hmm.
know, and a lot of people say that, you know, I mean, it's obviously the opening to the parade, but a lot of people, you know, for them, they're like, that's the significant part. They know it's Mardi Gras when they
Yeah.
hear that, and they get excited. So that was obviously something that sat in the back of my mind when I got my motorcycle license. But again, at that point, living in the Blue Mountains and not being around community as much in Sydney, it was they were sort of like something that I would aspire to, but at that point wasn't quite ready with my motorcycling skills, and I also didn't know really that many people in the community that were more Sydney based. So
Mm.
it was probably, say, a year or two after I got my motorcycle license and sort of became a little bit more confident, that I sort of ventured down to Fair Day and had a chat to the crew, which is now me. So I
Yeah,
know what
yeah.
it's like to turn up there, not, you know, not really knowing a lot of people,
A
and
novice and shy.
yeah, incredibly shy, and you know,
Yeah,
with a few friends and families having concerns as they let me ride off on my L's or my P's. I can't remember what it was at the time, from the Blue
yeah.
Mountains to Sydney to meet the notorious Dykes on bikes with the
That's
aspirations of
fantastic.
becoming a member.
Yeah. Well,
um,
and like you said, when the roar of the bikes starts the parade, there's something almost spiritual about that nowadays. It's like it
yeah,
seems to just resonate right through the whole crowd. Like it is a sort of, besides the First Nations float, which is equally as special too now.
yes,
But the roar of the bikes is, yeah, is such a
yeah.
statement.
Even I think for me, even doing it now for close to sort of nine years, I think it'll be.
Yeah,
Um, it still gives me goosebumps,
yeah, yeah,
literally all over doing it. The I cannot wipe the smile off my face, even
yeah,
if I
yeah.
tried.
Mm,
It's also met with an intense level of sort of focus and anxiety, because you're conscious that you are, you know, you've got not only hundreds of thousands of people watching you, but you've got the media watching you. And I guess since my time on the committee, I'm fully aware of the background of how much work has gone into making this successful and happen, and for it to be a show for everyone that's turned up to watch, and people are
mm,
watching on TV hoping to catch a glimpse. So it's important. So there's a level of responsibility, but it's also met with, you know, extreme excitement. And you know, I'm actually, if anyone was to zoom in on my face in the parade, it's a massive smile, but I probably have tears welling in my eyes, because it's
yeah,
so overwhelming
yeah,
to be part of that. And you know, that's what I say to anyone, even if it's just as a pillion on the back, it's
yeah.
something that I would love for people to experience if they're able to.
It
And
is quite extraordinary, isn't it? Being
yeah,
in the parade,
it's
like you, like Dykes on bikes are incredible anyway, but just to be in the parade and have all
yeah,
those faces looking at you,
yeah,
and
and
it's such a, and
screaming, and it's
screaming, yeah,
intense. It's
yeah,
intense. So it's an adrenaline rush, and
and everyone,
it's
like from kids that are probably that may have been brought there by parents or just inclusive families and community members, just the whole works. It's I remember the first time I was in it, it was like really intimidating. Like it took me a
yeah,
couple of blocks to just let go and just get into it.
yeah. And it's not. I think it's not just the people on the street. You know, when you're on Oxford Street and you look up, it's the people hanging out of apartment blocks and over
Yeah,
balconies screaming as well. So
yeah.
it's intense.
And then you hit Taylor Square, and it's
Yeah, then
like
we hit Taylor
bang.
Square, and you
Yeah,
know, you've got the media bays, and often,
yeah,
you know, the flamethrowers or
yeah,
boom cameras swinging down right in front of your face.
yeah.
Yeah,
Do
so
they do
it's
they actually stop you and want to chat with you at Taylor Square, or is it all kind of moving a bit too quickly?
we're timed. So I mean, I've been in meetings with Mardi Gras for, say, about 3 months now, just with the parade team and a small sort of gathering of Dykes on Bikes committee, and also there's Boys on Bikes that ride behind us as well. So
Yeah.
they've got a couple of people that organise them. So we have planning meetings with regards to the timing of it, but also each year there's something different that's sort of changed about the parade route. You know, regulations have changed. New South Wales Police needs something. The transport needs something from us. So we have those briefings, but it's also we touch on constantly about how it's timed, because we're fully aware that it's a massive production. It's live, and that we are the very first float. So if something goes wrong with us, there's a carry-on effect, and everything else is delayed. So with regard to your question with Taylor Square, we don't really get to stop, and there's no sort of interviews as such or chatting, but we are asked to pause there for a moment, because we're conscious that's where the main media sort of presence is. So, you know, we pause there for a little bit.
And how many people are in this year? How many people are riding?
I'm not 100% sure of the total numbers of bikes, but I think it's around about 140. We've had on sort of anniversary years 200. I think the most has ever been around closer to 250 bikes.
Wow.
And then you've got Boys on Bikes behind us with their allocated number from Mardi Gras. It's a little bit less this year, just because the parade route has been narrowed, which it sort of has been for the last year or two, with the cycleways put in there. But what that means is we used to ride down the parade route 3 bikes abreast.
Yep.
As it's narrower now, we have to make that 2.
Right.
Which means that the length of our bikes down the parade route is longer, which means we take longer to do it. So they've had to reduce the numbers that were allowed.
Yeah.
To sort of give room for that, and because
so is it a bit of a first in best dress? Like you've sort of got to register to So look, take us back a little bit to kind of the roots of Dykes on Bikes and how it sort of started.
Yeah, so Dykes on Bikes we've been riding in the parade since 1988, which is sort of officially when the club was formed. Yep. And then we've been leading the parade since 1992. It was previously, and there are still some members of a motorcycle club called the Vixens.
Yep.
They are sort of like part of the founding members of Dykes on Bikes Sydney. And it was obviously in the 80s, it was still a time where it was not openly acceptable to be gay. And I think from speaking to some of those members of the Vixens, which, you know, I'm grateful to call friends and, you know, chat to on and off throughout the year, their sort of story around that is that they didn't feel overly comfortable having the word dyke written on a big patch on the back of their leather vests. I think it was, I mean, people were aware of that, but it was just they didn't need to advertise it as such. So the group was originally called the Vixens, and then sort of transitioned into Dykes on Bikes, which I think I've explained to you. Dykes on Bikes is a worldwide organisation with multiple clubs within Australia, but also all around the world. Originally from San Francisco, and they're classified as chapters if they run under the sort of constitution of San Francisco. And they have a logo that's different to ours, and that's because Dykes on Bikes is, which we, with permission from them, we spoke to them about that and wanted to form a club using the word Dykes on Bikes, but it was independent of that. So we run our own constitution that's gone through AGMs and been approved by members over the years, and it's changed slightly. And
that makes sense. Yeah, it must be.
It just means that we're able to make decisions that are relevant to our club within Australia, within our sort of our guidelines and our culture here.
And it was such a tumultuous time back then, like the late 80s, early 90s, the height of the AIDS epidemic, but also laws in New South Wales that had sort of only recently changed for gay men to legally have sex. So it was sort of, people were still kind of hiding and not necessarily out and proud completely. So
absolutely, there's still a stigma attached to that. And I mean, I'm grateful to be, you know, I'm in my early 40s, so I wasn't part of Dykes on Bikes
Mm,
at that point in time, and I didn't have to live through that.
mm,
But I'm also very aware of the history and the roots
mm,
of the club with regards to that, and spoken firsthand to people that have lived through it. And I'm just, what a time to be, and I'm grateful for the allies that people had at that point in time
mm.
to sort of assist where they could.
Yeah, yeah,
None of us can sort of fix everything and help, but I'm grateful for the people that did what they could
yeah.
within their means to that. And that's something that I'm incredibly proud for the impact that Dykes on Bikes had at that time.
Well, it's an amazing legacy. It's just an amazing kind of history that just sort of
Yes.
keeps sort of growing and I guess
Yeah.
evolving too. We'll get to the evolving down the track. But so you became a member and then you spent 8 years as secretary, I believe.
Yeah. So it went fairly fast in the scheme
Yeah.
of
So
I joined as a member, as a very new member. I rode in the parade, I believe, once
yeah.
as a member and under the guidance of whoever, the committee that was formed at the time, and not knowing anything and very nervous, and just elated to be part of it and to
Mm,
experience that. Um, I think Dykes on Bikes in the media, a lot of what people see is just the Sydney Mardi Gras Parade, which is
yeah.
fantastic. It's what an amazing part of the festival that it is. But I think a lot of people aren't aware that we're a motorcycle club that runs all year round.
Mm,
We hold events, rides every month, but we also hold a lot of community events. Some are for members of the club, and some are open to the whole LGBTQIA plus community. And so it was through that we call the committee calls out for volunteers to ask to help for those events, and through that it was that I was keen to be involved. It's something I do. I like to help where I can and step in.
mm,
So I was there at the beginning of the event. I was there at the end of the event to help pack down.
mm.
So through that, we came to an AGM, which I went to attend as a member and sort of got roped into
Yeah.
to joining the committee. As
Yeah.
I think many people know that have been in community groups,
Yeah.
it's what happens. You sort of
Yeah.
you show a bit
Right
of
time, right place. Yeah.
yeah, right place, right time,
Uh,
and you show a bit of initiative, and next minute tap you're it.
yeah. Yeah.
So I was again still feeling very fresh at the time and new to the club, and the thing that made me able to do it, I believe, was that it was joining the committee as not as a locked into secretary or any sort of specific role. It was, we've got a couple of positions that are general committee members,
Yeah.
and it was basically what I was doing already. I was turning up at events. I was volunteering my time above and beyond just attending the event. And they
Yeah.
were like, it's kind of what you're doing already, but you just get to have an official title and a
Yeah.
patch. So I was like,
Yeah.
okay, cool, I can do that.
Yeah.
That's fine. We'll do that. And I mean, something else that was important for me at the time, I come out of a sort of a fairly rough relationship with someone in Sydney who was keen to have me go back to the Blue Mountains and disappear
Right.
from the scene.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I was aware that at that moment that if I committed to being on the committee of Dykes on Bikes, it
Yeah.
would make me conscious and present. I would keep showing up
Yeah.
at events, and through that, I found this beautiful family that I have that I
Yeah.
call
Well, I
Dykes
was
on
gonna,
Bikes.
yeah, that's a good segue because I was sort of also gonna just kind of tease out a bit of the experience of being a dyke in Dykes on Bikes. There must
Yeah,
be, yeah, a lovely comradeship of sort of incredible people that you
yeah,
mix
yeah.
with.
I think that we're from the outside maybe we're seen, and I know that we're still seen this way because I have conversations with a lot of different people as these sort of rough, rugged, scary dykes, which
Yeah.
I understand in the late 80s and 90s where the club was formed, having that sort of appearance to the outside world was so important because it's what made us be able to be strong
Yeah.
and be those what we're now known as the protectors of the community, because we
Mm,
were able to sort of come to the aid of the gay and the transgender people being assaulted and do what we needed to do to stop those attacks, because we were feared. We
Yeah.
were,
Yeah.
those
Fierce.
rough
Yeah.
butch
Yeah.
leather dykes sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And there is definitely still that stigma attached, but I think there's a softening now within the club and within the community, and I think we're seen to be a little bit more approachable and not feared.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
I say this, I'm happy to carry that rough exterior if that's what people want to believe, but I think also when you start to talk to a few of us and get to know us on a personal level,
Yeah.
you're aware that we're actually just big soft teddy bears that
Yeah. Yeah.
are full of love
Yeah.
for our amazing community, and we just want to do what we can to help where we can.
Yeah. Look, I love that idea of sort of there's an exterior that people sort of see, but it
Yeah,
doesn't take much to sort of scrape the surface, and then you can see people
yeah,
are so much more than just that exterior.
yeah,
For
absolutely.
sure. What are some of the highlights that you've had since you've been, oh,
Highlights.
so secretary and then
Yeah, so
became president
I
last
think
year?
I got to be general member, that role that eased me into the committee for probably about,
Yeah.
it was less than 12 months. I didn't get to finish a full year. The secretary at the time had to step aside due to work commitments. As I've explained, we all have full-time jobs,
Yeah.
we have families. It's a volunteer role, so if something becomes to a point where you're not able to do that anymore,
Mm.
it's better for the club if take an absence. They stepped aside, and so we need to find another secretary, and they were sort of like, "Oh, Kendal, you work an office job. You're great at communication. We can
Yeah.
tell that. Can you do it?" So I was like, "Sure." I think I'd already dipped my toe enough in the water to feel comfortable with the
Yeah.
the team that I was working with,
Yeah.
and I was like, "I can't promise anything, but I will step up."
Yeah.
So filled it for the rest of that year until we came to the next AGM, and then officially started the role as secretary. We run as sort of 4-year terms maximum.
Yep.
So I did that for 8 years only because I did step down after the first 4 years.
Right.
And another secretary stepped in for about a month, and then for whatever reason basically said, "I can't do this."
Yeah.
And then the current committee said, "Kendal, would you step back in?" So,
Oh, no.
it's not a full 8 years. It's 8 years,
Yeah.
less a
Yeah.
month or so. But
But they knew exactly what they were getting,
they knew
and
what they were
yeah.
getting. They knew
Yeah.
that I was able to take it on, and so I did another 4 years. And I guess within that time, committee, there's always an overlap between, we don't all start our sort of terms at the same time. We come
Yeah.
in different pieces depending on where other people step aside. And as I said, sometimes it changes midterm as well.
Sure.
So people fill
Mm.
in. And so it sort of was in conversation around that, the president that I was working under the last 4 years, Emily Saunders, a wonderful friend, also was aware that it was time for her 4 years to be up. So the club would be looking for a new president, and discussions were had around who have we got in the existing committee that might be suitable for it.
Yeah.
And so it was, tapped on the shoulder, but also there's a nomination process, there's an election, and our last
Yeah.
AGM
And they
in
obviously
August last
knew
year.
that. Yeah. They obviously knew you and what you could do and how much you know the club already,
Yeah,
and yeah,
yeah.
it was like a
And I
natural
mean, it's not
progression.
always that there is actually competition when it comes to those roles
Mm.
with community groups. There's often,
Yeah.
it's not, wow, I got voted in, I beat everyone else, because it's not that it's a
Yeah.
competition. It's more
Yeah.
that we need someone to do it, and you're it, and there's no one
Yeah.
else. So will you do it? So
Yeah.
that for me, part of it is about making sure that the club continues, the club that I've grown to love so much and that has given me so much.
Mm.
This is my way to giving back to that. And if they need someone to fill those shoes and to step in, I'll do my best to have a go.
And I guess you've over that time, you've experienced change,
Yes.
in the group, in the club.
Yeah.
Um, how do you sort of navigate that territory of sort of the change?
With that, I think we take it sort of day by day. It's
Yeah.
something that's ever evolving, and the change has happened even within the club before my time,
Yeah.
from when the club was first formed. As I sort of touched on before, we have a constitution
Yeah.
that explains about the requirements to. We have different levels of membership as well. So we have full members. We have members that are sort of out of Sydney,
Yeah.
and ones that just purely want to ride in Mardi Gras Parade and they don't want to be part of the club.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
For the other events, and that might be because they live, in another
Yeah.
state, and they
Sure.
come here for the parade.
Yeah.
And then we also have associate membership as well. So
Right.
that's open to allies. It's open to the supporters of the club. It might just be that they want to contribute by being a financial member in that sense.
Yeah.
So they become an associate member. But how it's changed over the years with regard to our full membership. The three key points that I'm aware of that have been there to be a full member is that you obviously need to hold a motorcycle license because it
Yeah.
is a motorcycle club.
Yeah.
That you need to identify as female. Now,
Yeah.
that is what has changed. It was the Constitution, our inclusion policy was
Yeah.
updated before my time, but I sort of was coming into the club around that time, so I was aware of the changes, and that's sort of around the fact that the club is open to transgender people as well, and non-binary. So it's important for the club to evolve that way and be
Yeah.
open to the way that people identify with their gender.
Yeah.
And the final part of being a full member is that you identify as a dyke.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's something that is, I mean, it's in the name, Dykes
Yeah.
on
Yeah.
Bikes
Yeah.
as well. So that's something that's important for the club. It's
Yeah.
something that has been questioned and that is up for discussion. And I believe that we will continue to discuss as
Yeah.
the members, evolve. But
Yeah.
at this point in time, that is something that it's Dykes on Bikes, and it's
Yeah.
important. The club
Well,
was formed.
there's a history in it. There's a rooted groundedness in Dykes on Bikes, and there's a significance of that, I would imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Mm.
the club was originally formed to create a safe space for dykes that wanted to hang around with other dykes and that rode motorcycles. And
Yeah.
there's not really any sort of spaces like that nowadays for that.
Yeah.
Specifically. And as I said, we are incredibly inclusive and supportive of the community, but it's also important, I believe, that for the club that we don't lose touch on the roots and the history of why the club was originally formed.
Yeah.
And to respect that and to
Yeah.
respect the members that joined for that reason and that still are keen to be part of that. And that may not fit everyone's
Yeah.
how they identify it, but we can't be one club for everybody.
Yeah.
We'll do our best and accommodate where we can, but no one's ever going to make everyone happy.
Yeah. Look,
We
you're never
can't.
going to encompass kind of
No,
everyone and get it right
and that
for
goes
everyone.
for
Yeah.
organisations all over the world, for
Absolutely.
workplaces.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah. Oh, look,
that's
even ACON, like it has a probably to a lot of people has a stereotypical kind of what it is. I know that
yeah,
it is much more, but people
yes,
will view it as one thing.
yes,
And then we can only do so much too. Like it's a very
no,
broad community with lots of
yeah,
different needs.
yeah.
And yes, we're broad, quite broad, but we can't kind of do everything all the time.
No,
So
you're
yeah,
never
I
going to be
understand
able
that.
to
Yeah,
satisfy everybody and please
yeah,
everybody. But I think if you go into it with good intentions,
yeah,
and we just try and be honest and accepting and welcoming where we
yeah,
can,
yeah,
that's for me, that's what this is about.
yeah, absolutely. Look, I told you when we first spoke, I got two beautiful dyke friends that live in San Francisco, and they've both come They were a couple. They split up, but they've both come deliberately to Australia at Mardi Gras to be in the Dykes on Bikes, and
Oh,
they're
fantastic.
a bit older now. They're kind of mid-70s. I believe one is still riding, maybe not the other. They may even be listening tonight because I let them know that I was excited to
How
talk to you.
fabulous.
Um,
Hello.
yeah. But yeah, they've had that experience too, of sort of being the dyke and being here in Sydney and being part of it.
Fantastic.
So you've got lots on. What are some of the highlights? Can you share just a couple of highlights you've had over the time that you've been involved?
Yeah, absolutely. There's gosh,
There's probably
it's
a lot.
definitely taking me on. It's taken me on a journey that I was not expecting when I
Uh,
joined it, and I guess that's why I'm able to speak with it with such
yeah,
passion,
yeah,
because it really does feel like I love this club and I love what it has
yeah.
brought to my life. So some of the highlights, probably the one that stands out the most, and only because it keeps almost reoccurring with the friendship, is that probably a few years ago I had the honour of putting Sydney Lord Mayor Clover Moore on the back of a
Oh,
motorcycle, my motorcycle
yeah.
that I had to ride through Sydney Town Hall, which may I mention is
Wow.
heritage listed
Yeah, yeah.
floorboards. So
Oh,
riding a motorcycle in there is daunting enough to
oh
not
my
scratch
God.
anything or
Yeah,
drop
yeah,
anything.
yeah.
So it was for the launch of Mardi Gras a few years ago,
Oh, the
and
World Pride, was it?
no, it was before that. I think it was
Right.
probably a year or two before that. But the brief was basically to ride from the back of town hall in the main hall through the crowd and
How
drop
exciting.
Clover Moore at the stage before she got up to do her speech. So there
Wow.
was there was a lot of training in that
Yeah,
beforehand, and a lot of nervous people. That
yeah,
one, I wouldn't drop the motorbike and scratch the floor,
yeah.
and two, I wouldn't drop Clover Moore
I
in front of all
know.
the
That's
press. So
hysterical.
that
Oh my,
was
yeah.
it helps that I'm 6'3" and
Yeah.
built like a strong Amazon woman. So
Yeah.
she was in safe hands
Safe and
there.
secure. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's
So
so petite. It would have looked quite,
yeah, it was definitely a photo moment, and
yeah.
it's something that Clover has remembered, because she very excitedly comes up to the stall at Fair Day and, where's Kendal? Where's Kendal? Let's have
Oh,
a chat, and then tells
yeah.
anyone that's listening, oh, she had me on the back of a motorbike, and she likes to tell everyone the story. So,
That's
and
fantastic. Yeah.
so she was there this year again
Yeah.
and decided to climb up onto my motorbike. She's
Yeah.
at side saddle, and we posed for some photos. So
That's great.
it's formed a sort of interesting
Yeah.
friendship with us.
That's
Um,
beautiful.
yeah, so I think the other important sort of special moments were escorting World Pride CEO Kate Wickett onto stage for the opening concert,
Yeah.
and similar sort of thing. Three ducks on bikes rode her onto stage, helped to get off the motorbike as she did sort of the welcome,
Yeah.
and then rode off backstage. That turned out to be a lot more complicated than we expected. It was meant to
Oh, so
initially
you're on
be.
stage. You're
We
riding
were
on.
actually on
Oh, wow.
stage. We did a practice session the day
Mm,
before, where we quickly realised that what we'd been told was to ride up one side and then down the
mm,
other. It was going to be a straight line. Was actually right up the back of the stage, across the front of the stage, and then make a very sharp U-turn on
mm.
elevated timber flooring with sort of, you know,
Oh,
cables hanging everywhere from all the
yeah.
stage lighting and everything.
Yeah.
So we had to make it look good, but it wasn't easy.
Had to
And
look
then
seamless. Yeah.
yeah, and then
Uh,
the stage floor that we did the practice on was a matte flat surface timber, and it was moments before we were waiting backstage that we were about to do it on the actual day, when the curtain sort of got flung open and I could see that it was a high gloss black floor. And I thought, that is not what we practiced on, and
yeah.
that looks very slippery.
Oh no.
Again, we've got the world's media on us and
Yeah.
someone important on the bike. Do not drop her.
Yeah.
So
Oh my God.
we carried it off under
Yeah.
pressure,
Amazing.
and
And what
that
a
was good.
wonderful event. Like World Pride was so special.
Very special. And
Mm,
that also led into Ultraviolet, which is the first Ultraviolet they had
yeah.
at Sydney Town Hall,
Yeah.
which was the request for Dykes on Bikes to escort Magda Sabansky, fabulous comedian,
Yeah,
Australian
yeah,
comedian, openly proud lesbian comedian.
absolutely.
So she was dressed as her character from Kath and Kim,
Oh,
and the idea
yeah,
was that Dykes on Bikes would surround her completely, sort of in a circle with little
yeah,
Magda in the middle, and walk her on stage. Once we were there in position, we would disperse,
yeah.
and out comes Magda singing and dancing and doing her performance.
That's
And
hysterical. Yeah,
again, waiting backstage, we seem to find out these things moments before.
yeah.
I said to her, so once we're on stage, we'll just disappear, and she said, no, no, no. She said, you're staying on stage and you're going to sing and dance with me.
Oh,
And we all sort of looked at each other like, wait, what? So
yeah,
it turned out to be one of those moments that probably if we'd been given the brief well before, I don't know if it would have been as fun and
yeah,
interesting, but
yeah. You might have
if
gotten
you,
scared or something. You might have got a bit sort of
yeah,
anxious
so
about it.
if you,
Yeah.
yeah, zooming in, if there was any, I believe there's video footage of watching it. It's almost like Magda with about 6 Dykes on Bikes in our leather vests, sort of line dancing behind her,
Yeah.
smiling to the cameras, but also sort of whispering to each other, what are we doing? And just keep miming to the song like it was all planned and choreographed, but it absolutely wasn't. But the feedback we've had is that people just loved it and roared with laughter and thought it was fabulous. So
And Magna's just gorgeous. She's such
yeah,
a
yeah, it was
great
definitely
person.
a
Yeah.
very, very fun moment to be part of.
Oh. Well, look, I'm just conscious of time.
Yep.
I've just got a couple of questions. We've touched on a few of the questions anyway that some of the people have sent in, but um, one question I've got, if you don't mind me asking, is if you could give one piece of advice to the younger LGBTQIA plus community, what would that be?
My personal advice is that I'm guessing. Um, I guess it would be to be gentle with yourself, to to take the time to find out who you are and to not be afraid, to know that you are loved and supported
Mm,
by the community, and but also to and I think this is something we've touched on is to learn the history
yeah,
of your community, because that's also so important for the younger
yeah,
generations to understand the roots of not only of I'm talking for Dykes on Bikes, but of the whole
yeah,
community, and to really understand about those generations that came before. And I'm not really speaking of myself in this because, you know, I hope at some point in the future I have made an impact for the community that people can then talk about me in this way. I'm talking about the generations from before me that really had to live through those hard times.
yeah, yeah.
It's important for the younger generations to learn about that and to understand that.
Look,
And
I love that sort of sentiment because I think there's 20 years between you and I almost. I'm 63 this year.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, I am the demographic that I work with is older than me. So
yeah,
the demographic is sort of 60 plus for me. So
yeah,
I get to learn from them, but I've had
yeah,
my own experiences sort of being through that sort of 80s, 90s sort of my coming out period too.
yeah,
But I think that's really important that we know the histories of all parts of our community. Like
yes,
all
yeah.
the groups like Dykes on Bikes and their significance and how they formed and
78ers, you know,
absolutely, yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
And I guess, I can't speak for all of the community groups and for that, but if I've got a role and I've been given this platform as the
mm,
president of Dykes on Bikes at this point in time, is to sort of something that's really important for me is to educate.
yeah,
And I know that we've got an influx of not only younger members but members that are identifying in all different ways, and it's so beautiful to see the diversity within our club.
yeah,
But I have a strong bond and a lot of great friendships with the older members of our club who speak about those times, and I'm fully aware of this because I have a lot of younger members saying that, actually members and members of the community saying that one, they had no idea about the history of Dykes on
Mm,
Bikes and why we are known as the protectors of the community.
yeah.
They have no idea the significance of why we ride first in the City Mardi Gras parade. They thought it was
Mm,
just something fun to do and hang out with your
yeah.
mates and ride bikes, which is also blissfully, I love they're blissfully unaware and they
Yeah.
haven't had to
Yeah.
experience that. But I think it's
Absolutely.
really
Yeah.
important um, to make them aware of that.
Yeah.
And we're lucky enough to have been in the media and had people wanting to tell our story. There's documentaries that have been made about the club in the last few years
Yeah.
that that have reached people, and we've received messages that they're just so touched. It's brought them to tears. They weren't aware, and they're so proud of that.
Mm,
And in that sense, I've had people from that generation. I've had 78ers come up to me personally and say, "Thank you for what you did." And
yeah.
I have to correct them and say, "Thank you." I
Yeah.
said I wasn't there, but
Yeah.
I'm honoured to be helping to carry the club through for
Yeah.
the future and continue that legacy. And I make them aware that I am not letting their stories be forgotten,
Yeah.
from where I can have the ability to share that.
I get the sense that you're just a sort of wonderful bridge in between
Yeah,
perhaps
I
the
hope
older
I
and
hope
the
that I
younger.
hope that's what it is.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, look, that's probably a really beautiful place to leave it. We've probably come to the end of our time. I really appreciate your time tonight, Kendall. Really nice
Thank
to kind of
you.
know a little bit more, learn a bit more. Um, and yeah, like you said, know the history of our community and the different clubs that we have. So I've got nothing but love for you. I'm sure the community has nothing but love for you and
Thank
all of the
you.
Dykes on Bikes. We're super excited to hear that roar again. I know
Yeah.
I am. I'll be in my Barbarella outfit, and you probably won't even know who Barbarella is, but
I no, I do, I
oh, you
do,
do.
because I'm
Okay.
an old soul. I'm an old
Okay.
soul with a younger body.
Well, if you see Barbarella, it'll be me in the parade. Um,
Fabulous, fabulous. I'm sure
and
you might not see me, but you'll hear me or hear
absolutely,
us. You'll
absolutely,
hear
yeah.
us.
And I'm really pleased that we're able to sort of continue on this sort of these episodes of Nothing But Love, because there's lots more wonderful community members that I want to touch base with. So um,
Wonderful.
thanks again. Enjoy the weekend and the rest of the week. And I hope you get a bit of restful time after that. And we'll
I
see you
look
in the
forward to the
community.
sleep.
All right. Thanks so much, Kendall. Really
Take
appreciate
care.
it.
Good
And
night.
also thank you, Beck, for the Auslan interpreting throughout the night. Really appreciate it. Love seeing you again.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Take good
Good night.
care.
Bye.
Happy Mardi Gras.